Reading Java APIs. This is one of the most important things you can learn to do in Java, because Java has provided over here in java.lang, or in Java, in the JRE, this one we have the SE10. JRE stands for Java Runtime Environment. SE stands for Standard Edition. It's really kind of the same thing, okay? But if you look here, it's amazing what's in here. Just amazing what's in here. And these are called modules. And then inside each module is a bunch of packages. And inside of each packages is a bunch of classes. Very, very rich language provided. How do you know what's there? It's pretty tough to know what's actually there. Believe me, if somebody's done it, it's probably there. If you want to do it, it's probably there, and you probably don't need to recreate the wheel. And so between that and Google, I'm going to show you really how to read these APIs when you actually do that. As we know, the major or the most common things used is java.lang. We're going to be using java.io. There's java.net. The new IO is in here. Java.sql is wonderful for doing database stuff. Java.text is used quite a bit as you go through. So a lot of the things that we want are in this Java.base, but there is a lot of other modules here that are used for a lot of other things as you go through. Okay, and so let's figure out how to read these. APIs, Application Programming Interface. How do I know what's in there? Well, you kind of know what you're looking for. And so if I do Java and I do string, okay, always put in Java first when you do a Google, you're going to see these things called Oracle docs. These are what I call the APIs. You need to get very good at reading these. Now notice here's one for platform 7, here's 9 and 9. I don't see 10, I don't see 11, I don't see 8. Typically they put them out here when things change. And the string class did change somewhat in JDK 9, and so that's probably the latest one that they have put out there. This is what an API looks like. This is how you're going to document as well. This is the way that Oracle documents, and this is the way that you will document as well. Right now, you probably understand 10% of it. By the end of this semester, you will understand 80% of it. How's that as we go through? Okay, but this is the documentation. And as I say, you will actually document some things of yours looking like this. So I hope you know how to write HTML. Only kidding. Actually, Eclipse will do it for you. So here's the name of the module. That's a new thing that was introduced in 9. There were never modules before. The language got so complex that they actually started putting packages inside of other wrappers to kind of organize better. It's in the package java.lang. Immediately tells you don't have to import it. The class is string. This is the inheritance chain, which we don't understand until mod 6. These are interfaces, which we don't understand until mod 6. Public final class string. Now final, interesting. We haven't used that word final for classes before. We've used them for variables. We know that means it's constant. We will see what a final class means when we get to mod 6. Extends object, implement serializable, and then it gives you some information that you should read. Strings are constant. Their value cannot be changed after they're created. That's very interesting. String buffers support mutable strings, changeable strings. So it's already telling you to be efficient. When you don't want your string to change, you want it when you want to use the string class. If they're going to be alterable, if you're going to, change the size of them and that, a string buffer is probably more efficient. And then you read through this, gives you some information about it. Goes through, make sure you read it. Important to know it's been around since 1.0, which means they've had this thing forever as you go through. And we know it's a typical class. We know Java classes have fields and methods. We know the fields are private, which means they don't do a bit of good for anybody else except for the class itself. And so the only thing we have are methods. All right, so let's go back and start looking at methods, and I'll be doing a different movie on methods in a nutshell to really talk about methods. You might want to watch that one as well. But a method, what's important about a method? It's access modifier. We've already talked that methods are public unless there's a reason to be otherwise. And there are times I have private methods, okay? But for us right now, methods are public. I need to know the return type. And we'll talk more about that as we go through. I need to know the name of the method, and I need to know what data I need to provide for that method to work. And those are the things I need to know. Those are part of what's called the signature of the method. That's that top line when we start actually writing methods. It has all that information in there. I do not need to know how the method does what it does. Now, if I'm writing the method, I probably need to know that because that's the body of the method. But how many of you know how next line really works? Or math.random? Okay, and how it really, the guts of the real code, we don't have to know. So for methods, again, you need to know the access modifier, return type, name of the method, parameter list, okay? And then I should be able to use the method. We also have to know whether it's static or not. That's critical. Make sure you do that. And so we'll look through there. So if you notice, the string class only has one field. Whoopee. Wow, look at the constructors. How do I construct a string? About 14 different ways to construct a string, all right? And the nice thing is it shows you the constructor, it shows you what you need to provide it, and it gives you a description of when to use it as you go through. And then when we get down to the methods, amazing methods here. Okay, so you got to get used to reading these APIs. Here you go. Now, it doesn't tell me access modifier. It doesn't tell me whether it's private or public. If it does not list it, it is public, okay? And so all of these are public methods, so they don't tell you that. This is the return type. This is the method name. That's the parameter list, okay? So if I wanted to find a character at a given index for a string, and these are not static, so I would do object.method. I would have the string, it would be an object. I'd do object.character at, I'm going to do a bunch of these for you, index, and it returns a character. The next thing that it shows you here is a little bit more information about the method. Okay, and then if you click on it, you actually get a lot more information here. Returns the character value at a specific index. The indexes range from 0 to length -1. The first character values its sequence is at index 0, the next is at 1, and so on. The parameter needs to be the index of the character value, and it returns the character value at the specific index of the string. It throws an index out of bounds exception. Now, this we need to know when we get to mod 6, but the other parts we need to know now. All right, and so we look through the string class. Amazing methods here for me as I go through. I can find a character at a given index. I can concatenate two strings together. Okay, I'm just picking some of these out for you. I can see if it contains a certain character sequence. Notice that's a Java class. I can go find more information about it. Okay, I can, let's see what else. I can see if it ends with a given string. I can see if it equals another object. Boy, we've already used that one. Equals ignore case. We've already used that one as we go through. I can find the index of a given character. Index of a given character starting in a certain location. I can find an index of a string. These are called overloaded methods. Same method name, different parameter list. Okay, is it empty? Returns a Boolean as I expect it to. Look at all these methods. I can find the last index of, and notice the return type you'd expect, an int. I can find the length, it's an int as we go through. There's some of these regular expressions that we talked about in mod 14 very, very briefly. I can replace certain things. I can split a string. Okay, I can find whether it starts with a given string, returns a Boolean. I can get a substring, a piece of the string. Boy, that sounds cool. I can convert it to lowercase. I can convert it to uppercase. Okay, when you actually go through, I can trim it, which means I can get rid of all the extra stuff in the front and the back, any leading and any trailing white spaces removed. This is awesome. And so knowing all these are available to me, the question becomes, how do I go through and use them, okay, especially in Eclipse? Well, now Eclipse says that it will give you most of this information, so you don't have to keep coming back here to the real APIs. But do realize you can always Google, put Java, put the name of your Java class, and you can find the actual APIs as you go through and do that. All right, so going back here to Eclipse and to our examples from mod 4, I want to look at some of these methods from APIs here as we go through. All right, and here's one on the string class. All right, the string class defined by Java. It's in java.lang. You create strings by using the constructor and use the methods to manipulate them. Now, this line of code bothers me, but that's okay. Should not be able to do that. That's a shorthand for strings only. In reality, that's the way it should be done. You always have to use the word new for making objects in Java, as you know. But we use strings so very, very often, okay, that Java allows you to do it this way. And there's a tad bit difference between the two, and I'm not going to go through that right now. Somebody can post out in Piazza. I'd be happy to tell you all about that. Okay, but for right now, it really doesn't matter which way you do it. All right, well, as you go through and do that. So there's your string constructor. So you could do it that way as you go through and do that. And you can print it out, my string. All right, now what we're doing here is in the notes here is what the APIs are. Okay, that's what it actually said across there. And you could know that because you can do, and this is the trick part about this, is you can do name dot, and you will see essentially the APIs that we saw on the web page as you go through and do that. All right, and if you notice this one right here, right there is the name of the method, there's the parameter list, there's the return type. All right, so all the information is given here. And the neat thing is if you click on this once, this essentially is all that information you saw in the web page over there. Okay, and so you don't have to keep going back and forth from the web to Eclipse and back and forth. Now, the last entry here after the dash, ignore that. That's the class it actually came from. Mostly all come from the string class. Where it's going to be different is if you have inheritance, but we don't need to worry too much about that. And so what this says, again, green circle public, the name of its character at, the parameter list, I must supply it an index, and it's going to return me a character. So that's the signature of the method. All right, now as we're going through and doing examples, that's what I put right here. All right, returns the character at the specific location. All right, now, so what I can do is I can do name dot, and notice when you type a C, it gives you all the ones that start with a C, and I find that one, and I put character at 2. Okay, so what that's going to do, remember that with Java always starts counting at 0, so that's really going to give me the third character. Now, something commonly done, especially when you start doing methods, is to do something like line 21. Totally useless. What you did was you went and got the character at location 2 from the string name and then threw your answer away. Because what this says is it returns a character, but you didn't do anything with the return. And so what happens is it does that and finds the character at location, at the third character, or at location 2, and then throws it away. So suggestion, or one of two ways to do it. Okay, one way is to get yourself a variable. Notice line 27. Okay, that returns the object of that. And so the nice thing about that is that it does the calculation, in this case my string instead of name, but just showing you how it goes, and then it returns it to a variable so that you actually have a handle on it. And then you could print it out. Now, you could do that all in one line of code. You could do a sysout. Okay, and then name.character at 2. And then you haven't lost it. You have not stored it in a variable, so you could not use it somewhere else. Okay, but indeed, you still would have it available. And so make certain that you do something with it if you actually go through and actually try to use some of these methods. All right, here's another one. That's pretty cool. I can concatenate 2 strings together. Okay, so what that says, read it carefully, is that the method's name is concat. Okay, you must pass it a string, and it returns you a string. It returns you a new string constant. It doesn't change the current one. If this was a void, if this returned a void, then that would tell you that it's changing the one that you had. Okay, but it's not changing the one you have because it says it's returning a different string, a new string. And you could read the APIs and you could see it says that. So notice my string.concat are you, okay, and it's going to return a new string. So when I print that out, it's now going to concatenate on the end okay, of my string, and my string is I am having fun, it's going to concatenate on the end of that RU when you actually go through and do that. So kind of cool. All right, Boolean equals ignore case. We saw that one before. Okay, here's Diane, there's Diane. I want to see if indeed equals ignore case. So object.method, object.method. These are all object.method. I want to equal ignore case on this object, passing it this other string. Again, it returns a Boolean, so get yourself a place to store that Boolean variable and then print it out. I want to find the length of a string. All right, how many characters in a string? Now again, you could actually give it a Boolean and print it out, or you could do it, sorry, that keeps showing up, all in one line. If you just wanted to print out the length, you could say the length of the string is myString.length. Or you could have stored myString.length in a variable and then printed out the variable. It really doesn't matter. I want to find the substring. Notice this one has two parameters. These are called the parameters. Okay, these are called the arguments. Parameters and arguments must match in number and data type. Methods in a nutshell, you will get sick of hearing me say that, okay, when you do that. So this is the name of the method is substring. You pass it 2 ints and it returns another string. All right, and so I want to pass it where I want to offset, which is where I want to start, and I want to know the end index. So it's going to get the substring between 3 and 8. It extends through index -1, and so you're actually getting 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And again, it returns a string, so store that somewhere when you actually do that. All right, and then you could print it out. And again, you can run this and look at them. I'm just kind of talking you through this. Here's a new string I just made, okay? And again, using new to create objects when you actually do that. The only exception is strings only. Java lets you do the shortcut if you don't want to. You can print it out if you want to do it that way. Okay, so again, for non-static methods, you do an object.method when you do that. So let's look at some of these. How about length? Phrase.length. Phrase.length. It returns an int if you go look at the APIs. And so I stored it, printed it out. I want to convert it to all uppercase. From the APIs, I know it returns a string. So I store the string and then I print it out. Okay, and again, how would I know that to uppercase? Well, what I can do, again, don't forget, in Eclipse, you can do phrase, I got to spell phrase, right? Dot, and then T, to uppercase, right there. Click it once, tells you all the information you want about it. Object.method, to uppercase the name of the method, takes no parameters, returns a string. I'm not sure what this last thing is used in 35%. That's really pretty weird. Those just showed up in JDK 10. Just odd. I don't know what those numbers, those percentages really mean there. I'll have to look it up someday, but that's all right. All right. I want to create a new string that has all of the E's replaced with a Z. From the APIs, I need 2 things in parentheses. Those are called the arguments, which are the old and the new characters. Characters are always in a single quote. Strings are always in double quotes. Don't forget that. We don't use characters a lot, and so we forget that when we do that. But I want to replace all the E's with a Z. And again, it returns a new string. It does not change the current string. Most of the string methods don't change the current string. Okay, now if you want to change the current string, how could you do that? You could do this part here. You could do phrase.replace this. Now again, if I just do that, it doesn't do a darn thing because it replaces it and throws it away. But if you actually did this, now I've changed the original string. Okay, because I actually replaced the E's with the Z's in phrase, and then I put it back into the variable phrase. And that's why Java typically in most of these methods returns strings, because if you really want to change the original one, you would just do something like line 89. All right, when you do that. I'm not going to save those changes because then I'll make changes to my original. All right, more strings down here. Okay, there's string, and I did it with the new string. I want to know what the last character is when I actually do that. And notice what I did in this case. I made some of these methods, and part of the reason I did that was because you're doing the quote problem, I think. Depending on what semester you're in, you're probably doing the quote problem. And what I'd like to do is I would like to put these into actual methods. Okay? And so what I would like to do is I'd like to find out what the last character in the string is. So I've written myself a method down here. And when we talk about methods in a nutshell, when you're in main, other methods have to be static as well. But this is my signature. It's public. It returns a character. I want to calculate I want to find out what the last character of a string that you passed me is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out how long it is. Notice I'm using the method string.length. I'm then going to get the character at size -1, because don't forget that. That's critical to understand. If the string has a length of 5, okay, the indexes are 0 to 4. Always. We always start counting at 0 in computer science. All right. And so if I want to know what the last character is, I go find how long the string is. And then I find the character at size -1 and I return that character. So I called this method. All right. Now the method's in the same class, so I just call the method directly. It's a method I wrote. Next thing, I want to take this, and this is similar to one you're going to do. I want to take this string and find out how many O's there are. All right, so I'm going to write myself a little method called numOs. I'm going to pass you a string. I'm going to return an int. That's how many there are. It's got to be public. All methods are public unless you have another reason. And if it's in the driver, it's got to be static. So number of O's is 0. I'm going to go through the string character by character. S.length tells me how big the string is. Object.method. If the character at I, location I, is equal to a big O, or the character equals a little o, because remember Java's case sensitive, number of O's plus plus. I have one more O. Return that number when you actually do that. So that's going to calculate how many O's are in my string as I go through. Okay, and so I want to call this method from main. It's in the same class, so I just call it. It returns an int, so I'd better get myself a place to store the int. This guy returned a character, so I got myself a place to return the character. That tells you how many O's, and then I print out how many O's there are as you go through and do that. Kind of neat stuff. Okay, so those are strings, and I will do some other examples with other classes, but you want to get used to doing that and reading those APIs as you go through. Now, the math class is a little bit different. So let's go look at math. And again, Java, and maybe even APIs. There it is. I'll take the 9. Latest one I see. Math class. Again, a lot of information you should read about it. It's in java.lang, so I don't have to import it. That's wonderful. It's got a couple fields. Ooh, look at the cool fields. They're capitals, which means they must be what? Final. E and pi. Yes, those guys don't change. Those are definitely constants. 3.1416, all capital letters, and base, natural logarithm. Natural E, base E. Here's the methods. And the thing that I want you to note are different are here. Hard word to kind of understand. They're all static. They're all static. Look at those. So again, same APIs we were reading. This is the name of the method, parameter list, return type, description over here, but they're static. What's the difference? Look at methods in a nutshell. When it's static, you can do, or you should do, class.method. Static means it belongs to the class as a whole. You do not create an object to be able to use it as you go through. And these are all the great things for the math class, like absolute values, all the things you love, okay, the tangents and the cosines and all those kind of things. You can round down, you can round up. And there's one that I use in here a lot, which is, if I can find it, power. So if I want to take 2 to the 5th, I would do math.pow 2, 5. Okay, 2, 5. But you can actually, those are doubles, so you can actually get 2.6 to the 3.8 power if you want to as you go through. But the important thing to note here are these are static. So when I come back here and I look at the math examples, Okay, notice what I did when I did this is math dot, not object dot. Nowhere in here do you see math m equals new math, where I create a math object when I do that, because I don't have to. This belongs to the class as a whole. And so I say class dot method instead of object dot method. But I still read the APIs just like I did before. And then again, good comments in there when you actually do that. So you can look through these and find the cosines and powers and whatever you want to do, but that's the critical thing about the static methods, and we will keep working on that as we go through. Now, there's some really cool classes that are that type of thing, and so I want to look through check valid here. Here's a really cool example, and this is our last example here for our API when we actually do that. What I would like to do in this program is I would like to check to see if a password is valid. Okay, and a valid password by my definition is it has to have a letter at location 0, a number at location 1, a dash, a special character, something other than a number or digit at location 3, then 3 letters. And if you think about doing that coding yourself, wouldn't even know where to start. Java provides our classes for us. Always find one for you. Do not recreate the wheel as you go through. It's got to be pretty easy to do if I can find those things when you actually do that. Okay, so and we're going to start really breaking things up in methods. Methods should do one and only one thing. If a method does more than one thing, it should be more than one method. And so my main method should always be short, and it's going to be shorter and shorter and shorter as we go on. Is all main method does is set up my scanner, asks you to put in a password, reads it in, calls a method to see if it's valid. If it's valid, it says it's valid. Otherwise, it says it's invalid. Bingo. That's all that main does. Okay? And as we mentioned before, you don't have to know how a method works. Well, you do in this case because you wrote it. But in Java, we don't know how the methods work for the Java APIs. And the user that's using your lovely valid method here doesn't have to know how it works either. But since you wrote it, you got to know how it works. So how does it work? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to pass it a string. Okay, pass it a string. And I know that it has to follow those characteristics. Well, the smartest thing to do first, since this is totally says what the digits have to be and it can't be anything else, is to check to see if and it's just a string method, if the length does not equal 7, return false. This is one of the first places we've seen that a method can return more than once. Okay, and what happens in a method, you can have more than one return statement. The first one it finds, the first one it actually executes, bingo, it's out of there. So if the length isn't 7, you might as well get out of here. Okay, because it's not going to be valid anyhow. That's a great first thing to check. Then what I'm going to do is check each character to see if it follows these rules that I have at the top. I need a letter at location 0, a number at location 1. I have some more letters here, so I'm going to do all my letters together. All right, so notice the first thing I do is I go and get the character at location 1. Okay, object.method. Object.method. Now, character class. Whoa, I love the character class. It's one of my favorite classes. All the methods are static, and it has some really cool methods like isDigit. Think about how you would program that if you didn't know that Java had that already available for you. I would have to go into the actual Unicode values to be able to actually figure out some of these things. Well, in this case, I mean, for letters I would. For digits, I would have to say, is it a 1 or is it a 2 or is it a 3 or is it a 4 or whatever it is, and that's kind of crazy too. But there is a great method, and it's a static method, so class.method instead of object.method. Okay, and it returns a Boolean. So you go look at if I were you, I'd open up the APIs for the character class, okay, or just do character dot. Okay, I can come here and do character dot. Okay, and again, look at all these constants that are in here, but I can actually look for is. I'll hit I for is. Look at all the is. Is alphabetic, is a digit, okay, etc., etc. There's a lot of really neat methods in here. You just got to figure out which ones you want to use. as you go through, okay? So isDigit. And if you look at isDigit, it says that you must provide it an int, and it returns a Boolean. So notice I could have applied that to a Boolean, but I just put it in an if statement. And so I want something, and if you notice, the important thing is that location 1 is I want a number. So if character.isDigit location 1 is not, notice the exclamation point means not, return false. Because if the location 1 does not have a digit, this password's not valid. Cool. All right, go get location 3. Okay, and location 3 is a special character, something other than a number or digit. It's so cool. The character class has a method called isLetterOrDigit. That's actually a whole method. So again, if the character is a letter or digit, location 3 return false. Because I'm looking for something other than a letter or a digit. That's just cool code. Now let's go check our letters. I'm supposed to have a letter at 0, 4, 5, and 6. So I got the character at location 0. I got the one at 4. I got the one at 5. I got the one at 6. Okay. If that one's not a letter, or that one's not a letter, or that one's not a letter, or that one's not a letter, return false. Because all 4 of them are supposed to be letters. Okay. And if they're not all letters, then return false. Location 2 was supposed to be a dash. So I got the character at location 2, and if it's not a dash, return false. I've checked everything. If it gets all the way down to line 54, I've checked everything, therefore return true. Okay, this is a great one for you to look at, but it also shows you the power of what Java provides for us. Now, how do you get good at this? Just playing with the Java APIs as you go through. It takes time. Okay, but Eclipse will essentially give you all the information that you need as you're going through and reading that. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. We'll be doing a lot more with reading APIs. Thanks.